Hello, Bravo bosses. This is the Bravo Investigator Podcast. I'm your host, Dana, and today in our Monday Reality Roundup, we are talking about The Ultimatum, The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Summer House, Love Island, Southern Hospitality, and Teen Mom. Let's get into it. Happy Monday, everyone. I hope everyone had a great week and a great weekend. I had a pretty good weekend. The weather here was really nice in Toronto, so I was getting in lots of walks with my doggy, and I recorded a couple of episodes, so you guys should definitely check that out. So it seems like the schedule going forward is going to be changing a little bit because I'm covering Married at First Sight, but Mondays is going to be our standard typical reality roundup like today. We still have one more episode of In the City Reunion Part 2. I'll get that to you on Thursday or Friday. And then I think I'm going to be releasing MAFS episodes. MAFS is Married at First Sight on Saturdays. And I really, really recommend that you guys watch this show. I am so into it this year. Think of it like Love is Blind, but on steroids in a way. And I know last season was bad if you watched it, but trust me, this season is so good. So please go and watch the 6 episodes that have dropped so far on Peacock and listen to my recaps and then come back to me, okay? Because you guys are going to enjoy it. And then House of Stassi is coming out on July 29th, and I think I want to cover that too. I know a lot of you don't like Stassi, and I understand not supporting her, so I understand if you don't want to listen to those episodes, but I have a feeling like this is going to be a really good show. I'm really looking forward to it, so I think I am going to be covering it. If there's anything else that you guys think I should be covering, let me know. I'm obviously not covering McBee Dynasty. I decided not to cover Real Housewives of OC, and to be honest, not much has really even happened. I don't know. I'm not really that interested in covering it, and not a lot of people are. What else is out right now? I guess we're just finishing up In the City, so I'm getting through that. And whatever else comes down the docket on Bravo, I'll definitely be covering it, right? Maybe Southern Charm will be coming back soon. I'm not quite sure, but whatever you guys are interested in, definitely let me know. It doesn't even necessarily have to be Bravo, because like I said, I'm covering Married at First Sight, which is on Peacock, and I'm covering House of Stassi, which is on Hulu. So let's get into our Monday Reality Roundup, because you guys need something to get through your day, and I understand it. So let's start with The Ultimatum, which is the most dumpster fire of a show. And this season, I can't even really put into words. Now, initially I did like this show, but more so the queer version. I don't know, I just really thought the couples and relationship entanglements were a lot more complex. This season of The Ultimatum, the straight version, has been literally chaotic. We've been talking about domestic violence, attempted sexual assault, like all of this weird ass shit, humiliation rituals, things that are very serious and dangerous and things that really shouldn't even be talked about on TV. Regardless of that, none of these couples were prepared for this. A lot of them were either too young or their relationship was in way too much shambles to go through something like this. I mean, every single one of them gets engaged at the end of the show. Just in case you guys don't know the concept of the show, I'll explain it again because I've been covering it in terms of the news for the past couple of weeks. So, The Ultimatum is another offset of one of these Nick Lachey and Vanessa Lachey shows on Netflix. And basically, you come in as a couple, and one of you has allegedly given the other person in the couple an ultimatum to get married. And the other person in the couple doesn't want to get married for whatever reason. They don't believe in marriage, there's a problem in the relationship, yada, yada, yada. So the idea is to date somebody else in the group here who has been cast on the show, to date somebody else from one of the other couples, and you live with them for 3 weeks and you try out that relationship. And then you go back to your original couple and you date that person and live with them for 3 weeks. And then at the end of it, you have to decide whether you want to get married or move on. So the finale episode is a proposal episode, basically. And then there's a reunion. So the idea is supposed to be like, is it this person or is it another person that I want, or is it just marriage entirely? So everybody ends up getting engaged. And I think that it's a really serious thing to break up with a long-term partner on TV, if you think about it, right? If you really think about like Lindsay Hubbard and how she felt like it was so incredibly disrespectful for Carl to end their engagement on TV. I sort of take that same sentiment when it comes to this show, and maybe that's why so many of them ended up getting engaged, because you can't, according to the rules of the show, you have to propose or move on. There's no like, okay, let's continue to date because you were already dating. It's different than Love is Blind, where it's like maybe you could keep dating and get to know each other better, even though that almost never works out on Love is Blind. But that would make sense because you've only known each other a month. While in this case, in the ultimatum, these people have frequently been dating for years. So I listened to and watched Blake. So Blake and Hayley were one of the more chaotic couples on the show. I watched Blake's interview with Charlene Joint and her husband, Andy Levine, on the Dear Shandy podcast. And I watched Hayley's interview on What's the Reality with AD, who's a previous Love is Blind person. And I'm going to be honest, both interviews were pretty chaotic and back and forth and confusing and contradictory in many ways. So I don't really want to get into them in great detail. I'll just sort of bring up some of the things that sort of stuck out. Blake did end up, I will say that Charlene and her husband did a really amazing job interviewing Blake because they really tried to pull things out of him that he wasn't really answering. Like, I just thought they were really good interviewers and were really good at asking him questions because every time he tried to sort of get around an answer, they came back to it and asked more follow-ups and more follow-ups, which it's a good style. It's the same thing that I would do, right? But they did it in a way without making him feel stupid, which sometimes those follow-up questions can sort of do. One thing that Hayley had mentioned in terms of their breakup was after they got engaged, they had gone to Charleston and they were out one night and he started hitting on these two girls and was like buying them drinks. Blake clarified that that was just something that they do, apparently. They love to meet people when they're out. And then he said that there was these girls that even Hayley was interacting with. But then he later clarified that the girls that Hayley was upset about were not those two girls. So again, it was Charlene like really pulling this information out of him. Then he said something, and then Hayley, not Hayley, sorry. Then Charlene really made the point to him, like, okay, so these were different girls. Hayley like goes to the bathroom and you're buying two random girls drinks. And he's like, yeah, but again, like that's just like how we are. It's how we do. And then Charlene puts it back on him and she's like, well, if the situation was reversed and you went to the bathroom and Hayley was just buying two random hot guys drinks, how would you feel about that? Wouldn't you get upset? And he's like, okay, yeah, I see what you mean. I have got you there. So you could tell that like he had sort of prepared a lot of his answers, which makes sense. I mean, Hayley had already done her interviews, so he even said something like, I really wanted to make sure I got a chance to tell my story. And I hated that I even had to watch this, but like, so you can tell that he's prepared a lot of answers to things and that he did listen to Hayley's interview. So he really wanted to clarify those things. Now, Hayley did say that there was an element of him putting his hands on her. There was a fight that they got in one night, having to do with the car or whatever. And he ends up pushing her, or she says that he pinned her against the car. And he later ends up getting arrested, which we ended up finding out about in TMZ a couple of weeks back. And he clarified that he says that he does not remember or he does not think that he put his hands on her except for swan diving her hands around because she was trying to fight him. And then he picked her up and put her in the car. Well, she says that he pinned her to the car and then like threw her in there or something like that. His version of it is that it wasn't in any sort of aggressive way. When he got arrested, it was for, I think, what he called family violence, which isn't really a charge that I've heard of before. But basically, it was able to be a misdemeanor, and it doesn't mean that anything actually happened. I don't really know. Like, the way he was explaining it was super weird, but we do know that it was expunged and that Hayley wrote an affidavit basically saying that, like, nothing had happened. So I don't really know what happened there, but like it's a really concerning story because like if we're getting to the level of someone even being arrested and people putting hands on each other, like this is not okay, obviously. One of the things that he did admit to that I thought was really interesting was in the ultimatum when he was with Ashley, which was his trial marriage partner. There was a period of time where like he apparently didn't talk to her for a couple of days, and she called him out on it, and she was just like, you know, you seem to be like upset with me. I asked if you wanted to like do something or if you wanted me to get groceries. You didn't answer. Then you said you went to the movies by yourself, which like I don't believe. And he's like, well, I did. And she's like, yeah, okay. So then, like, I remember how he comes back to her like the next day after having some thought. And he's like, now that I've put some thought into this, it's like literally the vibe. He was like, well, you know, when you said yesterday that I didn't go to the movies by myself, that wouldn't hold up like in a court of law. You can't just like say something and have it be so. You had no evidence of that. Well, that was the most ridiculous argument in the world because this is not a court of law. And what ended up being true is that he didn't go to the movies by himself. He went with Hayley. Like, that was like textbook gaslighting. So it was really interesting that he ended up like full on admitting that because he went so hard in the paint at Ashley for basically calling him out for something that he in fact did. So and that was just with his trial partner. So can you imagine the kind of boyfriend he was in his actual relationship? And listen, I am not saying that Hayley is any peach, okay? Because she is definitely not. And the way that she's portrayed in the show is extremely aggressive. And we see Blake portrayed in the show extremely differently, except for this one incident or kind of interaction with Ashley or his sort of his ending with Ashley. But we see him in a much more passive way throughout the show. Something that Hayley has brought up on podcasts is what keeps being cut out is like the context and what is getting me there, right? It does seem odd, I'll admit, right? Like it does seem very odd that she's going from like 0 to 100 and he seems so completely calm and it seems like she's doing that out of nowhere, right? Especially given him like being arrested and the way he was with Ashley, right? Like it's clear that he does have the ability to like rile somebody up and to be maybe even an aggressor himself. So, you know, I want to give Hayley like a little bit of grace because I'm sure that things were sort of difficult on his end as well, but they were only showing it on hers. Something else I want to talk about is Jessica and Edris, I believe is his name. So Jessica Grace and Edris were a couple on the show who barely even made it on the show because in the first, how many episodes in were we? Like maybe one or two, when we're supposed to be doing the switch off and deciding who our trial partners are, Edris ends up getting down on one knee and proposing to Jessica Grace. She says yes, and they go off into the sunset, or so we think. Well, at the reunion, which was the most insane reunion of any show I've ever seen, Jessica Grace and Idris say that they are no longer together. Jessica says that basically from the time that they got engaged, he like didn't touch her or look at her or do anything until the next day. And then basically told her he felt like forced to do all of that because he wanted to pick somebody else in the experiment who ended up being kicked out of the experiment, Alex. And so this isn't what he really wanted. And he was like really, really rude to her in the reunion. It just felt like really, really unnecessary the way that he was speaking to her. He was saying that, like, she was explaining that, like, they tried to work on things and that they were still sleeping together and, like, traveling outside of the country. And then he says something like, extremely crass, like, yeah, we had sex. And then, like, right after I, like, came, I told you, like, I wish we hadn't have done it. And it's just like, dude, like, you're really humiliating her right now. Then she brings up on the reunion that he subjected her to humiliation rituals. And we're all just sitting there going, excuse me? What? What? What are we saying? And what's her name? Vanessa Lachey tries to get more information, and Jessica Grace just shuts this down. Again, one of the reasons why this show is so extremely chaotic. Now, after the reunion aired, apparently Jessica Grace and Idris decided to get back together, which is absolutely insane. Given the horrific way that he spoke to her on this show, and given like, I mean, the guy comes off high, and he even says that on the show. Like he gives this very laissez-faire vibe. And aside from that, he doesn't seem to have a lot of love and care for her. And their relationship seems extremely chaotic, to be honest. Like, look at all of the things that they've been through. So she ends up speaking about this, or they both do, in an Instagram statement that I'm going to read for you guys. So basically, they said that the Ultimatum reunion was filled with many emotions, and in the heat of the moment, we both said things we deeply regret. For 2 years, we have been partners in a relationship built on mutual love and respect, and during filming, we failed to honor that foundation. We want to publicly apologize for our choice of words and the incredible disrespect that we showed each other. We also want to take the opportunity to clarify some events and statements made during the season that could be easily misinterpreted due to editing. Girl. Okay. During the reunion, Jessica Grace mentioned that she was being humiliated. The intent of that statement has been misconstrued as she was referring to the rejection she has sometimes felt in the relationship versus any specific practice or actions. We would additionally like to address the timeline around our engagement on the show, as it appeared Idris only proposed as Jessica Grace was going to enter a trial marriage with someone else. In reality, these events happened hours apart, although editing for brevity made it appear Idris only proposed to prevent a trial marriage. Additionally, while the reunion was painful to watch, the dialogue did lead us to reconnect and attend therapy following filming. We are happy to share that we've decided to give our relationship another shot, recognizing we have a lot of work to do and a lot of healing, both as individuals and as a couple. The ultimatum did what it was designed to do, and we are grateful it gave us another chance to choose each other. Prayerfully, Jessica Grace and Idris. You guys, are you kidding me? Like, absolutely wild. So then they end up going on the Vile Files together. I didn't watch it. It was just a clip that I ended up seeing online. But, he's sitting right by her and she's saying, "Oh, I only said that stuff about the humiliation rituals because I was trying to say something that I knew would really get at him. And I was just like saying stuff that I knew would be like really explosive because I was trying to hurt him." And this was obviously a conversation that the two of them had together. And that's obviously different from what she's saying in this statement and different from what she said on AD's podcast, where she meant more like humiliation, like he would ignore her and things like that. So you guys have a lot of different stories here. This is absolutely insane. And I can't wait for the statement that you guys make in a couple of weeks when you break up again. Okay. That is it for the ultimatum. I would say skip the season, to be honest. It really wasn't worth it. And it was dangerous in a way, in my opinion, for them to air this because it covered so many concerning topics and didn't provide any sort of resources or anything like that. And it really just felt like everything was happening purely for shock value, which we love in reality TV, but there's got to be a line. You know what I'm saying? Okay, let's move on to the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And I feel like this is happening sort of on a weekly basis where a new couple on The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City is breaking up. Last week we had Angie and Sean, and this week we have Whitney and what is her husband's name? Justin. Thank you, Justin. I'm actually sad about this one. Apparently it has to do with the business stuff and money stuff. And we did hear her talk a lot about this last season, how he wasn't really helping with Wild Rose Beauty in the way that she wanted, or he had sort of like steered her in the wrong direction, which ended up screwing her over with the company. I'm really surprised that they're breaking up over this. And it is a separation for now, so who knows what'll happen, but I feel like they've been through a lot worse. Despite the way that they met, which was completely inappropriate, like I believe he was her boss and they were both married and they were like cheating under the desk and everything. Despite that, I actually really liked them as a couple. I thought that they were really strong. I thought they had a really good family, but TV does things to people, money and business does things to people. And if she was being serious about what she said last year about like her and him kind of going out there and doing their own thing and then coming back to each other if they need to, it's just like, all right. I mean, I don't really truly believe that that's like a healthy point in anyone's relationship. And you even had Bronwyn saying that she was open to something like that when she had that sit down with Whitney. And then, of course, her relationship ended 5 minutes later, right? So I don't know. It's sad they have young kids. Who knows what'll happen? But I wish them the best. And I really do hope that they work it out. I do. I mean, like, I think they've been together 14 years, which is a very long time. They've gone through a lot of different tribulations. I mean, think about Whitney's dad and his like alcoholism, their religious issues. Justin losing his job because of them being too sexual on the show, right? Like I feel like those are the trials and tribulations. Well, these are probably not the normal trials and tribulations that every relationship goes through, but they are trials and tribulations. And I guess what we're saying is they didn't make it through it, right? And it's sad. But I want to start saying from now on, not from now on, because I feel like we said this with Mauricio and Kyle, and then I said it again with Angie, Kay, and Sean, and I'll say it again with Whitney and Justin. These decades long relationships, even Whitney's and Justin's, 14 years, that's not a failure to me. To me, like you grew a beautiful family, you had two beautiful children. I don't think that it's necessarily a failure that the relationship didn't work out, especially when you had such a long, beautiful marriage. That's what I'll say. Okay, let's move on to Summer House, which is in full swing. Season 11 is happening. We're seeing filming happening all the time. Salley Carson was actually out there this weekend hanging out at the Summer House. So that's really interesting. She's seen partying with Kyle. So I love a crossover. I love to see a little bit of that happening. I, I don't think they would end up like together in a real way, but like, how compatible are Salley and Kyle, if you think about it? They both love to party and stay out late and be silly. I think that they are actually kind of perfect for each other in a crazy way. So you guys know how Salley and Lala have that sex podcast now, right? So Lala did end up, or sorry, Salley did end up talking a bit about Kyle on the podcast. So I'm just going to read you guys a little bit of that transcript. She was saying that like she was having fun with like this football player guy. Maybe a few weeks back, but she was saying that she had Kyle texting me and he was like, where are you? But I'm like, dude, you're doing your thing. 2 days later, he was like pictured walking from Surf Lodge with some other girls. I feel like it's just like a known thing at this stage of the game. He's like fresh out of a full-on marriage. You're having fun. But here's the thing. I feel like things do get sticky when you start putting intimacy in the mix. Oh my God, 1,000%. And now me and Kyle have hung out, what now? 4 times now? And like he tells me, like, I get a little confused because, things will go out online and he'll be like, it wasn't like that. And I'm like, dude, you don't have to explain anything to me. Like, we're not together. We're single. You're freshly single and like doing your thing and having fun. Like, you don't have to apologize to me. I'm doing my thing too. But I mean, like, I like Kyle. I like hanging out with him. I enjoy hanging out with him. We're very compatible. So do you think like it's maybe a timing thing? Lala asks. And Salley says, maybe, yeah, timing is everything. And I completely agree, right? He is fresh out of a relationship. He hasn't even specified what he's looking for at this stage of the game. I think he's probably just looking to have fun, but I think somewhere down the road, something could be possible here. The only problem for me is the fact that they live in different places, because other than that, I think these two are actually extremely compatible in a lot of ways. I think that, she's always saying that she's such a good girlfriend. I think that once she has her person, she puts her all into that person. She's super supportive. So I could see her being really supportive of his DJ stuff and of Loverboy and even like promoting it. I could see her doing like a lot of that for him. Yes, does she go out there and have a lot of fun right now? Sure. Is she allowed to? Why not, right? Until someone is ready to lock her down, she's gonna go out and be Salley. So, but one day I would like to see the king and queen of Summer House be Salley Carson and Kyle Cooke. I'm here for it. Okay, let's move on to Love Island. And unfortunately, Kenny Rodriguez decided to do a podcast about his relationship with Janae, and ugh, nobody wanted to hear from him, right? Like nobody wants this, but we have to put it out there, or I have to put it out there because we're doing our reality roundup. So I got to tell you guys what's going on. That being said, I did not want to give this podcast a download. I think it was called the Journeys podcast. Didn't want to give it a download. So what I decided to do was review somebody else's Reddit summary of it. So I'm going to read somebody else's Reddit summary and then we'll go through Janae's response. So this person said, in Kenny Rodriguez Breaks His Silence, the leaked text and what actually happened, Kenny shares his side of the story for the first time since his very public breakup with Janae Craig. Rather than focusing solely on the breakup, he begins by telling viewers who he was before reality television. He talks about growing up in the South Bronx, being raised primarily by his mother, attending boarding school, playing baseball, and eventually building a career in industrial sales. He explains that he never planned on becoming famous. LOL, you're not famous, and originally turned down Love Island to pursue a stable career before later accepting the opportunity. Kenny describes his time on Love Island as a life-changing experience and says that he entered the villa simply hoping to find a genuine connection. He speaks warmly about meeting Janae, praising her intelligence, infectious energy, and ability to light up a room. He insists that he never pursued her because she was popular with viewers, explaining that contestants have little understanding of public opinion while filming. After leaving the show together, however, life changed almost overnight. He went from being an ordinary employee with a few thousand social media followers to someone recognized everywhere he went, receiving brand deals, public appearances, and hundreds of thousands of followers. While many people saw this as a dream come true, Kenny says the sudden fame caused overwhelming anxiety and pressure. He became afraid of being judged, obsessed over public opinion, and even felt uncomfortable leaving his apartment because strangers constantly criticized everything from his clothes to his personality. As the interview shifts towards his relationship with Janae, Kenny explains that their struggles began long before the public knew anything was wrong. According to him, they argued frequently, often every few days, and although he cared deeply for her, he repeatedly expressed that he was unhappy and emotionally exhausted. One of the biggest differences between them, he says, was how they handled life in the public eye. Janae enjoyed creating content, filming YouTube videos, and sharing more of their relationship online, while Kenny preferred privacy and found it difficult to pretend everything was okay after arguments simply for the sake of social media. He says that by the time they filmed Beyond the Villa, he had already emotionally checked out of the relationship and had told Janae several times that his mental health was suffering. Even so, he refused to expose their private issues on camera because he didn't want to embarrass her publicly. Okay, then why did you go on the show? Like, it was so weird when they did Beyond the Villa because he didn't want to live in the same apartment with her. Dude, this was like a 6 week thing. It's like a vacation, basically. You can't live with her for 6 weeks. So don't do the show. You clearly only did the show for the money. So don't act like a fucking martyr. Anyways, I'll continue. Kenny also shares his perspective on the relationship itself, emphasizing that these are his personal experiences. He says they were repeated cycles of arguments, reconciliations, and promises of things would improve. He described feeling emotionally drained and claims that he was often yelled at, cursed at, and treated disrespectfully. Although he admits he could have ended the relationship sooner, he says he stayed because he believed things might get better and because they had both built a romantic relationship and a business partnership together. Exactly, that's what this is. He repeatedly tells viewers that he does not consider himself a victim and accepts responsibility for remaining in a relationship that he knew had become unhealthy. When discussing the breakup, Kenny says the final incident occurred after an event in Los Angeles. According to him, the two argued before returning to their hotel when he fell asleep. He claims that while he was sleeping, Janae went through his phone, leading to another confrontation the following morning. He alleges that when he asked to see her phone in return, the argument escalated and she became physically aggressive. Kenny says that this was the last time they saw one another. Afterwards, he wrote her a letter explaining how he had been feeling throughout the relationship, but instead of resolving things privately, he says the situation quickly became public through conversations with her friends, allowing only one version of events to spread while he remained silent. The most emotional part of the interview centers on Kenny's mental health following the breakup. He says the internet backlash became overwhelming after his phone number was leaked and he began receiving nonstop phone calls, hateful messages, and comments telling him to harm himself. He describes experiencing panic attacks, depression, and feeling trapped by the constant public scrutiny. He recalls sitting alone in his apartment, believing he couldn't escape the hatred surrounding until his father drove to Dallas to be with him after hearing how desperate he had become. Kenny credits his family, his faith, and eventually therapy for helping him survive what he calls the darkest period of his life. He also mentions that among his fellow Love Island castmates, Cordell was the only person who reached out to check on him, something he says he will always appreciate. Throughout the interview, Kenny's primary message is not that he was perfect or that the relationship's problem was entirely one-sided. Instead, he says that he wanted to reclaim his own story after months of remaining silent while others defined him publicly. He acknowledges his own mistakes, admits he stayed in the relationship longer than he should have, and says he regrets allowing fear, anxiety, and desire to keep things private to prevent him from speaking sooner. Ultimately, the interview is less about attacking Janae than it is about explaining how sudden fame and a struggling relationship and relentless public criticism affected his mental health and changed his life. Again, remember that this is somebody else's synopsis of the interview. I did not listen to it, but regardless, I still listen. I'm a mental health advocate, and I do think that the way that the internet comes for a lot of reality TV people, especially Love Island people, is absolutely insane and chaotic. And no matter what you have done to anybody, death threats should never be happening. Absolutely. But It's also my understanding, unless I already said it, but it's also my understanding that he did admit to those texts that he said to his friend where he was like, I'm not attracted to black women or whatever. But that apparently he says in the interview, and maybe it's just not in the synopsis because I definitely heard it from other people that he said like basically to the effect of like, I'm Dominican, so like I'm not racist. And it's just like, you can still be racist. Okay. There's lots of like self-hating groups, right? So you can absolutely be racist just because you are Dominican, and it doesn't excuse the things that you said in those horrifying text messages. So Janae has, of course, clapped back. So I'm just going to pull that up so I can tell you guys what she said. So she says, before I call my lawyers, I would like to make a cute little statement to the person who thought it was a good idea to send me a cease and desist and then go on a whole ass podcast and make up straight fucking lies. Very ballsy of you. How fucking insane. But if you want to fucking play, let's fucking play. I think you should give me permission to drop all of the text messages. Why don't we start there? Give me permission to drop all of the text messages and then we could just play. From there, you know everything you said was a fucking lie. All of my friends know it's a lie, so I'm not even stressing. But for now, my mind is on set. First of all, I'm on set right now. I spared you for a whole fucking year. I've been minding my business, literally focusing on myself and my blessings, and you thought that was a good idea. All right, bitch, let's fucking play. But also, how about you tell your 99-cent ass fucking lawyers to answer the fucking phone? Because what you're not going to do is ever think, yeah, you're going to get away with it. I'm sorry, guys. One more thing, because I'm literally on set and then I have to talk to my lawyers for the rest of this. You guys are tagging me in these videos of his raggedy ass podcast. No, I'm not going to watch. I've seen enough clips to make a call. But if you really think that someone that's 6'3" needs to call the cops on someone that's 5'6.5", either you're a bitch or you're a bitch. He knows for a fact that I threatened to call the cops, but you want to play it the other way. I think that's so crazy. You know that I was going to call the cops on you and you want to lie. It's just so crazy. The last thing I said to him before I was going to call the cops, he piped the fuck down and then I left and that was it. Because the second you want to threaten me, it's a fucking rap. It's a fucking rap. Fucking talking about begging me to stay. Bitch, do you know who I am? Are you okay? Like, are you actually okay? Clearly you're fucking not. But my lawyer will talk to your lawyers and then we'll play. But I really hope and pray that this kid stays, yeah, post them. So you guys can really see what really happened. All right, so there is that one. And then she makes another statement saying, I just need to say one more thing. My lawyers are drawing up paperwork. Never in my life have I ever assaulted anyone ever. It's not even in my character. I would never do such a thing. Most important, even after I've learned from a particular someone their views on the Black community, about the LGBTQ community, about immigrants in our country, even though their dad is an immigrant in America, I still would never get physical. When I tell you guys you're tagging me in these clips, please, it's like 60 minutes or 90 minutes of straight lies. There was no daily arguments. We were perfectly fine. Obviously, we argued because we're a couple, but it wasn't on the daily. When someone has a vendetta and an agenda to make as much money as they can from someone, they're going to play the part. So I don't know why someone's acting like we're miserable. We were perfectly fine. And the only time the cops were brought up is when somebody snatched my phone, accusing me of having screenshots. And I told them, you need to give me back my phone. And when they didn't, I simply went over to the hotel bed, grabbed the hotel phone, and gave it to me real quick. Apparently, someone accused me of having screenshots of their conversation. And if you think I have 74 screenshots of someone confessing about the nastiest, worst things you could say, then you obviously don't know me. I would never do such a thing. That's crazy. And please know there was never a conversation about me begging his family for him back. There was never a breakup where he ignored me for 3 days. It's literally all a lie. He never ignored me for 3 days. I never begged his family for him back, because one thing I would never do is beg for a man. I know my worth and would never beg for a man. And you guys know that for a fact. Most importantly, the only begging is when his family reached out to me. They're talking about someone threatening them. They claim that they have our address. It wasn't us. We never think of those kinds of things. He's never said those things. And what did I do to you guys? The last thing I talked about over a year ago was leave the family alone, because I'm such a good person and I believe them that they'd never do such a thing. Nah, boy, was I wrong. But please know I'm not a violent person, and know everyone knows that. There's always such a small handful that just obviously gets in. I'm going to get my lawyers to take it from here, and we'll leave it at that. I hope you guys have a blessed day and never ever forget. When someone comes for you, I'm guessing maybe the funds are low. I'm assuming you had your 60 minutes, 90 minutes of a whole live for $1, and now you're about to go into overdraft because you thought it was a good idea. All right, so that got really messy and crazy. I have to agree with her on the fact that, like, she stayed really silent on this. When this happened, she, took her one moment to sort of regroup and come back from, the really horrifying breakup that just happened to her. And then she moved on. She never, like, started spewing shit about him on the internet. She never started going off. She just moved on with her life. And then he goes and does a podcast and brings it all up again, right? So it's very messy. I hope it ends from here. It should hope. Well, no, I guess not because she's getting her lawyers involved. All right, well, then I guess I'll let you guys know what happens next in this saga because I guess I'm curious what can be done here legally. That I'm always curious about. There's like defamation and stuff like that. So I'm always curious how far you can go with lies, I guess, in terms of the law. All right, well, in other Love Island news, Nick and Alandria have broken up. So they have been together for a year, and Nick actually ended up confirming this just yesterday on TikTok. He wrote, "To Nicolandria community, the rumors are true. I didn't want to give people false hope, so I wanted to clear the air. We will always continue to love each other always. It's sensitive as well as a private subject. Thank you for respecting our privacy." So what's crazy about this is a lot of people still believe that they were never truly a couple, that it was all for the show, especially with the timing of the breakup. It is sort of weird. It's almost like exactly 1 year post Love Island, as if like they had a contract for a year or something like that. I was not really big in terms of Nicolandria, in terms of like following what they were doing after the show, but what I'm hearing is that they weren't pictured together a lot. I don't know if that's really true, or maybe they weren't pictured a lot recently. That would make more sense because even though I wasn't really following them, like I was following them like on Instagram, but like I feel like I saw a lot of photos of them together, but maybe I'm wrong. And then there was all these rumors about her being with Travis Scott or having like conversations with him or something. And then Dumois had apparently posted about that, and Olandria commented to her saying, "Get your lawyers ready." And Dumois said, like, "Have them call us." So who knows, really? I feel like I can't really have a true opinion as to whether their relationship was real or not because I don't feel like I saw it. Even on Love Island, it was so much closer to the end. And I feel like with Love Island in general, this is something that I always say. I feel like we get to know so little about these people that it's really hard to invest in them in a real way. So I think it's sad that they broke up. I think they were a beautiful couple physically, but I didn't really get to know them emotionally. So whether they were real or not, it's sad that it's over and on to bigger and better things because Olandria is absolutely killing it. I'm seeing her in all of these commercials. She's modeling, she's doing the damn thing. So as long as everybody is on good terms, it's all right with me. Not that they asked me. All right, moving on to Southern hospitality. Last week, we had some crazy stuff going on online. What seemed to be some strife between TJ and Leva and maybe even Joe. And we were like, what was going on here? Because like TJ was posting something about like having someone bigger, like holding him back and holding him down business wise. And it seemed like he was talking about Leva, but then Leva was like, "Oh no, he's not talking about me. That's silly." But then they unfollowed each other and Leva posted this weird shit. Well, then this week, or last week, I guess, Joe Bradley announced that he is joining the Uptown Hospitality Group. So he made this post that says, "I'm joining Uptown Hospitality Group and calling Share House my new home. This is a huge step in my career and an opportunity that I've been working towards a long time. I'm incredibly excited to continue growing in hospitality, take on more responsibility, and keep learning from an amazing team as I work towards my goal of opening a venue of my own. I'll also have the opportunity to work across all of Uptown Hospitality Group's incredible venues here in Charleston. One of those, by the which, is By the Way. Now, By the Way is Austin and Craig's restaurant, and Leva hates Austin and Craig. So right after this was posted, my friend, Bravo for the rest of us, got the exclusive directly from Leva that Leva has quit Southern Hospitality. And I don't really know what that means because, first of all, you think about that at face value and you're like, okay. I mean, like, is she that integral to the show in terms of her actual being a character on the show, not really, right? We're more interested in the youngins and what they're doing, right? But in a very important way, she owns the restaurants that they all work at. So for her to quit, I mean, I understand in her sense. She feels like all of these people are turning against her. TJ, Joe, she feels very underappreciated by what she feels that she's given them. And now she feels like they are turning against her. So why should she be on the show? I get that. I also get from maybe, well, I don't really get Joe's perspective because I'm sorry, on Southern Hospitality, that last season where he felt like he should be partnering with Leva and Lamar for like a new restaurant when he had barely been around, I don't really like agree with him on that. And he stuck so hard in his convictions on that that I believe that in his mind, he believes he's ready to move on to something else. That being said, I'm hearing that his job at this hospitality group is going to be like as a barback, which to me is like a huge demotion. But it's a huge fuck you to Leva to go work basically alongside Craig and Austin. It just is. So what does this mean for the future of Southern hospitality? Well, again, at face value, you would think nothing, right? Like, could we do scenes without Leva? Absolutely. But the show is set in her restaurants. Could we do it without the restaurants? Well, then it takes away the authenticity of why we love the show. Because the one thing I really felt like this show still had were these young people who were literally still poor, still working in these restaurants. And if you take that away, meaning I guess we're not filming the people who still work there, then we're going to be filming what? Joe Bradley at his new hospitality group, TJ trying to like start brick and mortar hot dog chains or whatever he's trying to do. Okay, right? It is following the lives of the people, but that starts to make us feel like that's when Vanderpump Rules became less about what it used to be about, which was about a bunch of friends who all were young and poor and slept with each other and worked in a bar together. And watching all of these people sort of do their own separate adult things just takes away what this show really was. So I don't know what's going to happen with it. It would have to involve a significant amount of recasting. Um, because essentially like or I don't know if Bravo will even consider like trying to negotiate with Leva in some way. Because again, it's not about Leva herself. It's about fucking Republic, right? And like so many of those people still really work there, and we want to see them working there because that's what makes this still interesting. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I feel like we could go on without her. We could figure out other ways, but it's still gonna be like the end of an era in a way. Okay, let's move on to our last story of the day, which is Teen Mom. And today we are going to be talking about a little fight between Kail Lowry and Vee Rivera. So Kail Lowry, as we know from Teen Mom, she has been having a contentious relationship with her baby daddy Joe for the last little while, mostly over the fact that he refuses to accept that their shared son Elliot identifies as gay. And this happened maybe like a year ago when Kailyn ended up having someone on a podcast where she mentioned Elliot's sexuality, and that's what ended up causing a strife between them, and eventually the end of the Baby Mama podcast between Kailyn and Vee Rivera. So Elliot still has a relationship with his dad and Vee, and there was a video that was posted the other day by Vee where it was Vee, her daughter Vivi, and Elliot, and they're all at Disney World and they're jumping around, having a great time. And Elliot comments on the video, "We heart Disney." So I was like, cute. And then Kailyn posts a story to her Instagram, which is basically like a picture of her, and then writing over the top saying, "Using my son for views on IG, but having zero relationship in real life is insane." Ugh. So when I initially saw this, I thought, Kailyn, no, why are you doing that? Obviously, Elliot is enjoying his time with them. Obviously, he still has a relationship with them. For you to say they have zero relationship in real life makes literal no sense when there is a literal video of them having a relationship. Then my friend, Breaking the Rules Pod Clips, definitely give her a follow because she puts out some really amazing content. She really made me think about this in a different perspective. She's like, think about this. He doesn't have a relationship with Joe and Vee in a real way because they refuse to accept his sexuality. That means they refuse to accept him. That means they have zero relationship with him because they don't know who he really is. So that's what Kailyn means by zero relationship. And I was like, oh, oh. it didn't even occur to me that way. I'm going to be completely honest. I took it the literal way. I was like, there is a literal video of them spending time together and having a relationship. So how can you say they have zero relationship in real life? But what she means is you don't have a relationship with him at all because you refuse to acknowledge who he is. Therefore, you do not know him. And for that, I completely understand and completely concur. That being said, I am curious whether Elliot actually wants his mom to be like starting shit with Vee on Instagram. Like, you would think that she wouldn't put something out like this without getting his permission because it does involve him. But I also feel like I can't see him actually wanting her to do that because it just creates more strife and more issues. So I don't know. I really don't know. But she ended up deleting it, of course, in typical Kaylin fashion. But I don't know, man. I really wish that they could all work it out because there was a period of time where Joe, Vee, and Kaylin had a pretty good relationship. I understand how it sort of ebbs and flows, and you have good relationships with some baby daddies at some points, and you have bad relationships with some of your baby daddies at other points, right? It's like especially when you have so many of them, it must be like a constant game. And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. I genuinely mean, you're not partners with any of these people anymore for a reason, right? Which means that you're not always going to get along. You're not always going to parent in the same way, but it is really unfortunate that they don't acknowledge Elliot's sexuality. Like, it's 2026. Let's, get our shit together a little bit. But yeah, there's never a dull moment in Kail Lowry's world. I'll definitely say that. Okay, you guys, that is the end of the episode for today. I hope that you enjoyed it. I will see you back later in the week for In the City Reunion Part 2. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at The Bravo Investigator. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the Facebook page. And I love you, BBs. I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Bravo Investigator podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at The Bravo Investigator. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and join the Facebook page. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a 5-star review.